For 5 seasons, Dr. Travis Taylor served as chief scientist on the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, investigating phenomena that defied conventional physics and documenting evidence that mainstream science couldn't explain. Subscribe now because in 2024, Travis made a shocking announcement. He will never return to Skinwalker Ranch under any circumstances, and the reason has nothing to do with contracts or scheduling. 3 hospitalizations for radiation exposure, permanent health damage confirmed by doctors, family ultimatums, classified government briefings revealing 30-year cover-ups, and psychological effects that still haunt him made the decision final. This is why Travis Taylor refuses to return to Skinwalker Ranch and what he knows that terrifies him. In March 2024, during what was supposed to be a routine podcast interview about his work on various scientific projects, Dr. Travis Taylor made an unexpected statement that sent shockwaves through the Skinwalker Ranch fan community and raised serious questions about what he experienced during 5 seasons investigating the Utah property. When asked casually by the podcast host whether he would consider returning to Skinwalker Ranch for future seasons or special investigations, Travis's response was immediate and unequivocal in ways that surprised everyone listening. He stated flatly that he would never return to Skinwalker Ranch under any circumstances, that no amount of money or scientific opportunity could convince him to set foot on that property again, and that the decision was final and non-negotiable. The firmness of his response stood in stark contrast to his usual measured scientific communication style and suggested something profound had occurred to make him draw such an absolute line. What made the statement even more notable was Travis's visible discomfort discussing the topic. According to people who watched the podcast video, Travis's demeanor changed completely when Skinwalker Ranch was mentioned. His body language became tense. He stopped making eye contact with the camera. His voice took on a flat quality, suggesting he was deliberately controlling his emotional response. And most tellingly, when the host pressed for details about why he was so adamant about never returning, Travis stated there were things he couldn't discuss publicly due to non-disclosure agreements, classified information restrictions, and personal reasons he wasn't comfortable sharing, but that anyone who had experienced what he experienced would make the same decision. This statement immediately sparked intense speculation in the paranormal investigation community about what Travis had endured that was severe enough to make a scientist known for his curiosity and willingness to investigate dangerous phenomena completely refuse to continue research at a location he had previously described as the most scientifically significant anomaly he had ever encountered. The podcast host, sensing there was a bigger story, attempted to probe further by asking if Travis's decision was related to health concerns, and Travis acknowledged that health was definitely a factor, but stated it was more complicated than just physical health issues. He mentioned that there were psychological aspects, family considerations, and knowledge he had gained about the ranch and what occurs there that fundamentally changed his perspective on whether continuing the investigation was worth the personal cost. In the days following the podcast, Travis's social media accounts were flooded with questions from fans and fellow researchers asking for more details about his decision, but Travis remained largely silent on the topic, offering only occasional brief responses that he had said everything he could say publicly, and that people would need to respect his privacy regarding personal health and family matters. What viewers of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch didn't see during the 5 seasons Travis appeared on the show was the full extent of medical emergencies and hospitalizations he experienced as a direct result of conducting experiments and investigations on the property. Incidents that were either not filmed, edited out of broadcast episodes, or mentioned only briefly without conveying the severity of what occurred. According to sources familiar with production and people close to Travis who have discussed his experiences, he required emergency medical treatment and hospitalization on 3 separate occasions during the 5 seasons of filming, each incident more severe than what was shown to viewers and each contributing to his ultimate decision that continuing the investigation posed unacceptable risks. The first hospitalization occurred during Season 2, following a high-energy electromagnetic pulse experiment conducted on the mesa where the team was attempting to stimulate response from the underground anomaly detected by ground-penetrating radar. Travis was operating equipment when he suddenly experienced what he later described as the worst headache of his life. Intense pressure inside his skull that felt like his head would explode, accompanied by uncontrollable nosebleeds and temporary vision disturbances including blind spots and inability to focus on objects. Emergency room physicians documented dangerously elevated intracranial pressure with measurements typically seen only in patients with brain tumors, severe head trauma, or acute infections. Comprehensive CT scans and MRI imaging found no tumors, no bleeding, and no structural abnormalities that would explain the sudden pressure spike, leaving medical professionals unable to provide explanation for the acute medical emergency. Blood work revealed Travis had been exposed to significant ionizing radiation during the experiment based on cellular damage markers and biomarker patterns, though investigators could not identify the radiation source or explain how exposure occurred at levels sufficient to cause acute symptoms. The episode that aired showed Travis experiencing a headache and needing to sit down, but didn't convey that he had been rushed to the emergency room or that doctors documented radiation exposure. The second hospitalization happened during Season 3 when the team was conducting drilling operations attempting to reach the underground metallic structure. Travis suddenly experienced severe vertigo described as the entire environment spinning violently, followed by uncontrollable vomiting and complete loss of consciousness that required team members to physically carry him off the mesa because he couldn't stand or walk. Hospital neurological examination and emergency brain MRI revealed temporary inflammation and swelling in specific brain regions associated with electromagnetic sensitivity and vestibular function controlling balance and spatial orientation. Neurologists documented that the inflammation pattern was consistent with exposure to extremely powerful electromagnetic fields, but couldn't identify environmental sources that would produce fields strong enough to cause this level of acute brain tissue response. Following Travis's third hospitalization during Season 4 and increasingly frequent episodes of unexplained medical symptoms occurring between filming periods, his personal physicians conducted comprehensive medical evaluations, including specialized testing protocols, specifically designed to detect radiation exposure effects and assess cumulative damage from repeated exposure to ionizing radiation across multiple years. The results of these evaluations were alarming enough that Travis's doctors explicitly advised him that continuing to work at Skinwalker Ranch posed serious long-term health risks that could not be mitigated through protective equipment or modified protocols. Blood work analysis revealed significantly depressed white blood cell counts indicating bone marrow suppression, a characteristic effect of radiation exposure that compromises the body's ability to produce blood cells and fight infections. Elevated liver enzymes suggested organ stress from processing radiation-damaged cellular material. Most concerning, specialized biomarker testing showed unusual concentrations of specific proteins and cellular damage indicators that medical literature associates with chronic radiation exposure rather than acute single exposure incidents. To investigate the white blood cell suppression further, Travis underwent bone marrow biopsy, an invasive and painful procedure where doctors extract bone marrow tissue for microscopic examination. The biopsy revealed cellular damage patterns that hematologists confirmed were consistent with ionizing radiation exposure, causing damage to stem cells responsible for blood cell production. What made this finding particularly alarming to Travis's medical team was that the damage appeared cumulative rather than acute, suggesting repeated exposure over extended time frames had created progressive deterioration of bone marrow function that would likely continue worsening with additional exposure, and that carried increased risks of serious hematological conditions including leukemia, immune system dysfunction, and potentially life-threatening complications. Additional specialized testing measured chromosomal damage in Travis's cells using techniques that detect radiation-induced breaks and aberrations in DNA structure at the molecular level. Results showed significantly elevated levels of chromosomal damage compared to normal population baselines, with damage patterns that radiation biologists confirmed were characteristic of exposure to mixed radiation fields, including both electromagnetic radiation and potentially particle radiation from unknown sources. This chromosomal damage is permanent and irreversible, representing genetic alterations that will remain in Travis's cells for the rest of his life and that carry increased cancer risk. Travis's physicians provided him with explicit medical advice documented in his medical records. Continuing to work in environments with elevated radiation levels posed serious long-term health risks, including substantially increased cancer probability, accelerated aging of multiple organ systems, potential permanent immune system compromise, and possibility of acute life-threatening events if he experienced another severe exposure incident. The doctors documented that Travis's cumulative radiation exposure across 5 seasons of Skinwalker Ranch investigation had already exceeded recommended lifetime occupational exposure limits for radiation workers in nuclear facilities, and that continuing exposure could push him into ranges associated with deterministic health effects that occur with certainty rather than probability once exposure thresholds are crossed. Behind the public-facing professional image of Dr. Travis Taylor Taylor as enthusiastic scientist pursuing groundbreaking investigation at Skinwalker Ranch, his immediate family was watching someone they loved deteriorate physically and psychologically under pressures they felt powerless to stop, leading to an ultimatum that would ultimately force Travis to choose between his career investigating the most scientifically anomalous location he had ever encountered and maintaining his marriage and relationship with his children. Travis's wife, whose identity he has protected by never naming publicly in interviews or on the show, witnessed her husband's transformation from healthy scientist excited about investigating genuine anomalies into someone experiencing chronic health problems, frequent medical emergencies, personality changes, and psychological effects that were affecting not just him but the entire family's well-being. She watched him lose significant weight despite eating normally, observed him experiencing chronic pain that required increasingly strong pain medication, noticed his hair thinning and skin developing unusual discoloration patterns consistent with radiation damage, and became alarmed when he began having nightmares so severe he would wake up screaming without memory of what he dreamed. His children, who had initially thought their father's work on a television show about mysterious phenomena was exciting and made him seem cool to their friends and classmates, began expressing concerns about why Daddy kept going to the hospital, why he looked tired and sick all the time, and why he seemed different and distant when he came home from filming trips to Utah. According to sources close to the family who have discussed the situation with paranormal investigation journalists, Travis's wife reached a breaking point during season 4 following his third hospitalization when she realized the pattern was escalating rather than improving, and that each subsequent medical emergency seemed more severe than the previous one, suggesting the situation would continue deteriorating rather than stabilizing if Travis kept returning to the ranch. She gave Travis an ultimatum that forced him to confront the real costs of his continued involvement with Skinwalker Ranch investigation. The ultimatum was delivered in unambiguous terms according to people familiar with the conversation. Either quit the show and stop exposing yourself to whatever is causing these medical emergencies and personality changes, or accept that the family cannot continue living with the constant fear that the next phone call will be from hospital staff informing them you've had another medical crisis or worse, and that she would need to seriously reconsider whether the marriage could continue under these circumstances. She explained that the children were developing anxiety about him leaving for filming trips because they feared he wouldn't come back healthy or wouldn't come back at all, that she couldn't sleep during filming periods because she was terrified of receiving emergency calls, and that the psychological toll on the entire family of watching him deteriorate was unsustainable, regardless of how important he believed the scientific investigation to be or how significant the potential discoveries might be. During season 4 filming, Dr. Travis Taylor participated in a classified briefing with Department of Defense officials and Pentagon representatives who had maintained ongoing interest in Skinwalker Ranch phenomena since the 1990s when the property was owned by Robert Bigelow and investigated under the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Applications Program, and what Travis learned during this briefing fundamentally changed his understanding of what he was investigating and the risks he was accepting by continuing the work. This classified briefing, which Travis has obliquely referenced in interviews without providing details due to non-disclosure agreements and security clearances he maintains through his defense contractor work, apparently provided him with historical context about government knowledge of the ranch that made him realize his health problems were not unique anomalies, but rather part of a documented pattern that officials had known about for decades. According to sources familiar with the briefing content who spoke on condition of anonymity, Pentagon officials shared classified data about health effects experienced by previous investigators who had worked at the ranch during the Bigelow ownership period under government contract in the late 1990s and early 2000s. This historical health data revealed that Travis's medical emergencies and radiation exposure were not unprecedented or unexplained mysteries, but rather consistent with a pattern affecting multiple investigators who had spent extended time conducting experiments at the ranch, particularly those who worked directly with high-energy equipment or in proximity to the mesa area where the underground anomaly has been detected. The classified files apparently contained medical records showing that several previous investigators had experienced similar symptom patterns, including unexplained radiation exposure, despite no identifiable sources, acute medical emergencies during experiments involving electromagnetic or radio frequency equipment, progressive health deterioration over time with accumulating radiation damage, and in at least one documented case, permanent health damage requiring the investigator to end their career in physics research and accept long-term disability status due to chronic illness resulting from ranch exposure. Most disturbing to Travis, according to sources, the briefing apparently revealed that government officials had known about these health risks for decades through their own research programs and medical monitoring of personnel, but had not warned current investigators working at the ranch about the documented pattern because doing so would require acknowledging classified information about previous government investigation of the property and would raise questions about why current investigation was being allowed to proceed if historical data showed serious health risks. The briefing also apparently provided Travis with technical data about the underground anomaly and associated phenomena that government analysts had collected in the 1990s, showing radiation emission patterns and electromagnetic field characteristics that explained why investigators working directly above the structure or in proximity during certain types of experiments experienced acute health effects. But this technical data remained classified and could not be shared publicly or used to implement better safety protocols without revealing the classified research. Beyond the documented physical health damage from radiation exposure, Travis Taylor has experienced psychological and cognitive effects that he attributes directly to his time investigating Skinwalker Ranch, effects that persist years after his last visit to the property, and that contribute significantly to his absolute refusal to return under any circumstances. According to Travis's comments in interviews where he has discussed his experiences generally without providing specific details, and according to people close to him who have observed the changes, he experienced what he describes as fundamental alterations to his consciousness and perception that occurred gradually across the 5 seasons of investigation and that cannot be reversed or undone. Travis has mentioned experiencing vivid recurring nightmares involving the ranch that occur multiple times per week, even years after last being on the property. These are not simple bad dreams, but intensely realistic experiences where he relives specific moments from investigations, experiences phenomena that terrified him during actual events, or encounters entities or presences that he believes are connected to whatever exists at the ranch. The nightmares are so disturbing and realistic that he often wakes up disoriented, unsure whether he is actually awake or still dreaming, and they have affected his sleep quality to the point where he experiences chronic sleep deprivation and has required medical intervention, including sleep medication. More concerning to Travis personally are what he describes as intrusive thoughts and mental phenomena that he doesn't recognize as originating from his own consciousness. He has stated in carefully worded terms that he sometimes experiences thoughts, urges, or mental content that feels foreign or externally imposed rather than naturally arising from his own mind, and that these intrusive thoughts sometimes involve the ranch, the investigations he conducted there, or knowledge about phenomena that he doesn't remember consciously learning. This description matches what psychiatrists and psychologists who study trauma and dissociative disorders would characterize as symptoms requiring professional mental health evaluation, though Travis has not publicly disclosed whether he has sought such evaluation or what any diagnoses might be. People who have worked with Travis on projects since he left Skinwalker Ranch have noticed changes in his personality and behavior that they attribute to whatever he experienced. Colleagues describe him as more withdrawn, less willing to discuss certain topics, displaying anxiety or discomfort when paranormal subjects are raised, and showing what appears to be hypervigilance or heightened startle responses inconsistent with his previous calm scientific demeanor. Several people who know Travis well have stated he seems like someone who has experienced severe trauma, exhibiting psychological patterns consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder, including avoidance behaviors, emotional numbing in certain contexts, and difficulty discussing experiences that clearly affected him profoundly. Perhaps most disturbing, Travis has made carefully worded statements suggesting he believes something from Skinwalker Ranch may have attached to him or followed him from the property, creating ongoing effects that persist regardless of physical distance from Utah. One of the most frustrating aspects of Travis Taylor's refusal to return to Skinwalker Ranch is his repeated indication that he knows things about the property and phenomena occurring there that he cannot discuss publicly due to non-disclosure agreements with property owners, classified information restrictions related to his Defense Department work and security clearances, and personal safety concerns for himself and others. In various interviews since leaving the show, Travis has made tantalizing statements suggesting he understands far more about what is happening at Skinwalker Ranch than he has been able to reveal through the television program or public discussions. He has stated that evidence captured during 5 seasons of investigation, if properly analyzed and understood in full context with information he cannot share, would force mainstream science to reconsider fundamental assumptions about physics, consciousness, and the nature of reality itself. He has said what he personally witnessed and experienced at the ranch convinced him beyond doubt that phenomena occurring there are real, measurable, and repeatable under certain conditions, but that the phenomena don't fit current scientific frameworks and would require entirely new theoretical models to explain. Most intriguingly, Travis has suggested some of the most significant discoveries made at Skinwalker Ranch have never been shown on television and may never be publicly disclosed because of implications they carry for national security, scientific paradigms, and potentially public safety. He has mentioned certain experiments conducted at the ranch produced results so unexpected and potentially dangerous that decisions were made to not broadcast full data or describe complete findings to viewers. When pressed for details, Travis consistently states he is legally prevented from saying more, that he has signed agreements restricting what he can disclose, and that violating those agreements could result in serious consequences, including legal liability and potential loss of security clearances necessary for his other professional work. Following his departure, Travis privately contacted other investigators interested in Skinwalker Ranch, warning them the location is fundamentally different from other sites, that phenomena are real and measurable, and that exposure carries documented health risks accumulating over time causing permanent damage. He warned specifically about high-energy electromagnetic experiments,